And I would like to welcome everybody who's joining us today and will be listening in the future. And I hope you enjoyed this presentation and find it useful. I'm Michelle Bone, I'm Director of UK New Artists. I'm just going to do a bit of housekeeping for everybody, which is I'll ask myself and the panelists to do an audio description. I am a white woman. I'm sat in my spare bedroom in front of a white wall. I have short dark hair. I'm wearing glasses and a white dress. There is live subtitling available. If you click on the CC button along the bottom of your screen, that will enable those to be seen. The talk is being recorded, so please, if you want to say anything or have any questions but feel a bit fearful, then obviously just pop something in the chat. You're welcome to leave your camera on or off, but we do ask that your microphones are turned off unless invited to ask a question. And if you do so, use the little reaction button with the hand to kind of note that we can see and know that you have a question for the panelists. So I'm going to hand over to Shekayla to introduce herself and Maxi today. So thank you all very much and have a really good session.
Thank you, Michelle. Hello, everybody. My name is Shekayla Maragh. I am a cultural producer, also founder of Cube, which is a Midlands-based music development agency, and we've been invited by UK New Artists to run a two-part session on the music industry. So yesterday we had a how to break into the music industry, exploring artistic identity, artistic development, and branding. And today we're talking about funding. So this is going to be a really insightful funding masterclass, which is presented by my wonderful colleague, Maxi, who I know through PRS Foundation and the Key Change program, which is an amazing development program for women and gender minority music professionals and creators. So yeah, without further ado, we'd love to introduce Maxi, and then we can perhaps go through how today's session will go. So over to you, Maxi.
Amazing, thank you, Shekayla, and it's so rad to be here. Hi everyone. Yeah, I'm Maxi. My pronouns are she and her, and feel free to unmute and ask questions in the chat if you at any stage if you want to. I am a small white woman with short hair, blonde hair. I'm wearing glasses and a gold chain necklace. I'm wearing a black t-shirt and I'm sitting in my bedroom in North London, my spare bedroom. Just so you know, I'm not sitting in my actual bedroom, but it's quite a messy one. So there are cushions behind me and a few pictures as well. Shekayla.
I realized I forgot to say my pronouns and audio describe myself. So
go ahead.
Yeah, so thank you. I am a Black woman. I'm wearing a black hoodie. I'm wearing a black cap. My hair is black. It's currently in twists. I'm sitting in my living room space. There are green plants either side of me. And I also have this lovely print cloth behind me. And my pronouns are she, they. Thank you. Thanks, Maxi.
Thanks, Shekayla. Yeah, and it's an honor to be here. I've loved working with and getting to know Shekayla over the last year. Even though it's been such a difficult time, I think connections have been made that are more valuable than ever. So I'm looking forward to much more of that collaboration. And to give you a bit of background from where I'm coming from and where I'm at, I am a drummer. I play drums in 2 bands. I run a record label called Gravy Records, which I started in my hometown of Norwich. And it kind of grew into a musical collective. So I have my own kind of, I guess, DIY company where we do events, PR, make zines, put on shows, things like that. But I currently work for PRS Foundation, which is the leading charitable funder of new music and talent development in the UK. And our kind of the thing that we do is that we give grants to musicians. So if you make your own music, or if you work with people who make their own music, then we will have an opportunity for you. And by opportunities, I mean that we fund new music. So we give out grants, and we form partnerships with organizations in the music industry to make sure that those grants are as valuable to you as possible. And so today I'm going to go into detail about some of those opportunities, and what we do specifically. So what you should think about if you're considering applying for funding with PRS Foundation, and hopefully it will be relevant for many other funders too. So even if PRS Foundation isn't right, hopefully the advice and the stages that I go through will help you think about your work and your career, and what kind of support might be available to you in the coming years. I just wanted to mention Key Change quickly, as it's how I know Shekayla, and it's a really kind of big part of my life and my work. And I would welcome anyone who wants to be involved to get in touch about that too. So one thing that PRS Foundation are quite well known for is spotting gaps or barriers in the music industry, and coming up with funds or solutions to help music creators address those gaps or barriers. So I think of them as kind of interventions. So if we spot injustices happening in the music industry, then we try to do something about it. And Key Change is a global movement for gender equality in the music industry. So it's set up to try and create a more equitable industry that supports women and gender minorities better, and ultimately helps women and gender minorities working in music to realize their full potential. So Shekayla has been part of the program, and we have an awesome talent bank of hundreds of women and gender minorities from all over the world. We work in 12 countries in Europe and Canada, and we essentially kind of work with that talent and kind of help them to get into the right spaces that appreciate them and will support them. There's a big international aspect too, but I'm not going to go into too much detail about Key Change because that's not why we're here. But check out www.keychange.eu if you want to know more or get involved. So I've got a bit of a presentation to show you. So I will switch over to that now. And just check that you can see that. Great. Thank you for the thumbs up, Michelle. And so I've just given a bit of an introduction to PRS Foundation, but this gives you a bit of wider context. I mean, we are mostly funded by PRS for Music, which is the collection society in the UK. And they basically give us money every year to reinvest into music creators. So I think it's important here to say that because PRS for Music represents songwriters, some of you might be PRS for Music members yourselves. And just to explain, I hope this isn't patronizing, but PRS for Music is a royalty collection kind of membership. So if you're writing your own music and you're performing it live or it's getting played on radio, then you are entitled to royalties for the songs that you've written appearing in those environments. So if you're kind of just starting to write music, then perhaps now isn't the right time to join PRS for Music. But if you're starting to perform, starting to get radio plays, then it could be a good time to think about signing up so that you can collect royalties and make sure that you are getting what's owed to you for your work. So I digressed a bit there, but basically PRS for Music are our main charity partner, and we leverage a lot of other funds in the music industry. Sorry, here we go. we leverage other funds in the music industry to make sure that we can give out as much as possible and support as many new music projects as possible. And I'd say we fund maybe 500 projects a year. I think that in case it's confusing to keep talking about projects all the time, I should make it clear that whatever we fund, we call a project. And I think that's just a way to make sure that we can keep track of what we're funding and make sure that people are coming to us with a kind of proposal in mind. So when I say project, I just mean something that has a start date and an end date. So if you're making music, it could be a single release, it could be a tour, it could be a creative residency. As long as you can give us the start date and the end date for that and tell us everything in between, that's what we call a project. And we don't really have any kind of limitations on how long that project can be. We just have a kind of suggested timeline based on what fund you're applying for. So when you come to PRS Foundation, I think it's important, as with any funder, to understand our funding priorities. So the Arts Council, who you may have encountered, one of their biggest considerations is how your work interacts with audiences in England. So when you're thinking about what you might apply for to the Arts Council, that is something that should be central to your application. Thinking about how you're going to access those people, how you're going to promote the work, and who they're going to be. With PRS Foundation, we're not so concerned with that. We're particularly interested in the quality of the music. So because we're funded by PRS for Music, which is a membership society for songwriters, our focus is always on songwriting. So whatever you're applying for when you apply for funding with PRS Foundation, always think really carefully about which music you use and which musical examples you're going to put in the application, because that will basically be 50% of the whole assessment will be on those tracks. And I mean, even if you're an organization, so a venue like the Roundhouse or a record label like Saffron Records in Bristol could come to us for funding, but they still have to put musical examples for the project. So even if you're an organization and you're not a music creator direct, you can still apply for our funding, but we still care most about the quality of the music. And I realize that's kind of a subjective thing, but the way that we kind of address that is that we work with experts from the music industry across all regions, all genres, all career levels, to assess the quality of the work and kind of mark it or judge it on how original and exciting that music feels. So I think a big thing that is a kind of testament to the quality of the music that we fund at PRS Foundation is we work in the industry, we collaborate with the industry, and we are the music industry. And so I think that when you come to PRS Foundation, you encounter people who are really passionate about music and genuinely want to support the best music out there. So definitely think about that when you're writing. You're writing this application for humans who care and want to support you. And so point 2 here, and I won't take so long on every point, I promise, but we want to help. We want to support projects that will have a big impact on your career. So we basically want the money that you're getting from us to go as far as possible and make sure that it helps you to realize your full potential. We don't want to give you funding to kind of spend £5,000 on working with a random collaborator who charges you through the roof and who will not help you progress kind of creatively or career-wise. We want to support you in activity that makes sense for you. So again, when you're thinking about your application, think about, one, how can I express the quality of this music? And two, how can I express the impact that this activity or this project is going to have on my career? And finally, we care about the fact that we want you to connect with people as well. This is our third priority, so that's where we kind of differ from the Arts Council, but we do want you to create work that is ambitious and connecting with as many people as possible, because ultimately that's what is going to make your career sustainable, and we want to help you to do that. My PowerPoint is a bit slow, so I hope, here we go. Is that right? Yeah. Okay, so here are some of the people that we fund, and I mean, I feel like this is kind of just looking at the award winners here, which is a bit of a misrepresentation of who we support. I mean, we fund amazing artists and organizations every year. Some of my favorite artists: Little Sims, Flo Hio, Self Esteem, people like K Tempest, people like Shekayla, and some of the Key Change participants. We fund people at all levels of their career. And so if you've just released one single, or if you're 4 albums in, we hopefully have a space for you. And as I mentioned, we form partnerships. Collaboration is really key to PRS Foundation, and I think that we value it quite highly when we're looking at potential partners and grantees as well. We work with people who kind of have different areas of expertise or specific areas of expertise to make sure that we're offering more than money, basically. So on one of our biggest funds, which is the PPL Momentum Fund, we partner with Spotify, who then form kind of relationships with everyone who gets funding, which can help with playlisting and things like that. We partner with Glastonbury on their emerging talent competition, so that we give funding to the winners, but then the winners also get slots at Glastonbury Festival. We partner with, for example, BBC Music Introducing, and give grants to people to go and perform on BBC Introducing stages at festivals like South by Southwest and Eurosonic and Reeperbahn Festival. So we kind of work with the industry to spot areas that kind of accelerate growth and accelerate or mostly just provide the right opportunities. And so we collaborate with people to achieve that. I mentioned that we fund both organizations and music creators. And so I wanted to show you this pie chart so you can see that the amount of money that we give to organizations, and when I say organizations, I mean venues, promoters, festivals, record labels, orchestras, talent development organizations. It's anyone basically who is applying for funding for a project, but the funding is going to go to another music creator and not themselves. Whereas when I say music creator, it's when the person themselves is applying for that support. And so even though we give about the same amount of money to music creators as we do to organizations, we fund way more music creators, as each grant is much smaller for music creators. So with our organizations, we usually fund them to work with a large number of music creators in a grassroots community setting. And so their support is for kind of a whole series of talks or showcases or studio sessions, things like that. So if you're an organization, just be aware that it might be slightly more competitive to come into PRS Foundation funding, because of that split. But if you are successful, then the grant is kind of a little bit bigger. I want to just make a note on that, the competitive nature of our funding, and I think you'll have it with all funding applications that you submit forever. It's highly competitive because it's money, it's sometimes public money that is there to support amazing art, amazing music to be made. And so we know that there is so much of that in the UK, and not enough money to go around. So our funding tends to be about, well, our grantees are about have a 10% success rate. And we tend to see that if people apply once unsuccessfully and then get feedback and apply again, then their chances of getting funding kind of doubles. So it's a really personal thing to apply for funding for your music and for a project that you really believe in. And so it can be really upsetting and discouraging to get rejected. But I really encourage you to stay positive and stay optimistic, and keep connected with people like me and PRS Foundation. We are all people who want to support you. And so if there's any way that we can kind of advise you and give you pointers and kind of help you on your journey, we will absolutely do that. The reality is that we can't fund everyone. But if you kind of take feedback on board and keep trying, then your chances greatly improve. And this is perhaps a little bit more detail than you need to know, but it's how we split up our funding opportunities. And the fund that I'd like to draw your attention to the most is the Open Fund. And the Open Fund is exactly what it says on the tin. It's open to all career levels, all genres, and it's open to all regions. It's kind of our most regular and consistent fund, I would say. We have 3 rounds every year of the Open Fund, so 3 deadlines in which you can apply. And we have a kind of offshoot of the Open Fund, which is called Women Make Music, which again is one of our kind of targeted initiatives to make sure that through this open funding, we are supporting enough women and gender minorities. The Open Fund for music creators is up to £5,000. So you can apply for a project and kind of, as I said, define your own timings for that, specify what you want the funding to be for, and allocate up to £5,000 of PRS Foundation support to go towards that. We don't fully fund projects, so whatever you apply for, you'd have to kind of have income or financial support from another source, which could be income from gigs or from merch that you're selling. It could be income from a kind of a label deal that you've got, or it could be your own investment that you want to put into your music. Just kind of keep that in mind, and when you're planning your project, it's very common with funders that they won't fully support 100% of a project. They want to see a little bit of money coming in from elsewhere. The Open Fund for organisations on the right here, you can get up to £10,000. So it's pretty much the same rules, all genres, all career levels, all regions in the UK, and any kind of activity involving the performance, creation or promotion of new music is eligible. So this is all of our funding for organisations, and again, I would highly recommend that you look at the Open Fund as a starting point, just because it's so applicable to most people. As you can see, we mostly support early career organisations in that fund as well. So it tends to be kind of perhaps promoters or festivals that are in their first few years of activity. I would say like definitely just be aware that PRS Foundation have other funds, because we are not just here for a one-time support system. We are invested in people's careers, and we like people to come back to us for support or be part of our network, be part of our community, and develop with us, basically. If you are a early career music creator, then we have a few different programs that provide quite targeted support to help you in those first few steps of your career. And I know that's very different for different people, but mostly these funds are set up so that there's not so much emphasis on a big chunk of money, but there's more emphasis on direct development. So mentoring support from experienced individuals in the music industry, products such as vinyl pressing or equipment, very simple application forms. So you just have to kind of film a video saying what you would like to do with this fund, why you should be given it. And mostly it's kind of the first entry point that a lot of people that we fund, it's their entry point to PRS Foundation. So people like Nabaya Garcia started with the Steve Innovation Award. So did Moses Boyd and Femi from Ezra Collective. Emma McGrath won the Lindsay DePaul Prize. Mobo Unsung, we've had some amazing artists. I think it was Grath who came through this year. Flash funding. Again, we've had some awesome grantees kind of press vinyl in our flash funding rounds, including Robo Cobra Quartet, I think. So we have people kind of start their journey with us there. Next one. And yeah, here is the open fund, which I mentioned. The 3 deadlines per year are important to note. The next one is in October. So I think this is quite a good time to start thinking about, okay, if I'm going to apply for £5,000 or £10,000, and I'm going to apply in October, think about the year after October and what you would like to achieve in that year. Think about what projects you might like to undertake, which would have a really positive impact on your career. So that could be a video campaign, an album, or a single release, which includes marketing and producing video assets and things like that. Just start thinking about what might have an impact. And you never have to change your activity for a funding application. The funding application should be there to boost you. You do not need to think about this as like the kind of be all and end all of your career, but it should be something that supports you and enables you ultimately. So definitely start thinking about it, but think about it in a way that inspires you and empowers you to be ambitious. Don't think about it in a way like, oh, how can I make my work fit? We have these next step funds, which again, I would love for you to just think about and consider when you're kind of imagining what your journey might look like with PRS Foundation. And these are much bigger grants that we give to music creators. We call them kind of tipping point funds. And that means that whatever activity you apply for, whatever project you apply for, is going to have a really significant impact on your career, because you're at that stage where just anything will push you. And so we tend to see big album campaigns come from this. So Novelist's Mercury Prize nominated album was funded through this fund, as was like many other Mercury Prize nominees, Anna Calvi, Little Sims was funded through this fund. The PPL Momentum Fund is what I'm talking about. And then we have the Composers Fund and Hitmaker, which respond to slightly different areas of the music industry. So the Composers Fund is for classical, Hitmaker is for writer-producers working behind the scenes. And then our kind of final big strand is international. So Key Change comes under this umbrella because we have that big focus on export and international collaboration. But ultimately, there are opportunities here for you to go and showcase at an international festival, to utilize the opportunities and the networks that that festival will bring you. So if you look on our website, there's a list of these festivals, and I'd highly recommend, no matter how early you are in your career, to check out these festivals and start thinking about which ones might fit for you, because they have different genre focuses. I think it's like with the global industry that we work in now, you can so easily start to track where your audiences are building with data from Spotify, or even just from social media. You can start to see where you might have little kind of pockets of fans. And if you respond to that with these showcasing festivals, then they kind of usually have amazing music industry delegates in the audience, and can really springboard your career in those regions. And so most of them have application processes, which mean that you don't have to randomly be discovered by a festival in Texas or in Montreal, but you can apply and then be kind of on the same level as all other artists applying from all over the world. So definitely check that out. And yeah, as I mentioned previously, the decisions are made by external assessors. So we do not decide ultimately who gets the funding. We really care, and we can really encourage people. But the reason that our funding works, and the reason that we see such success from people who get our support, is because we have amazing people kind of making those decisions and working with us, and making sure that we're supporting the best new music, which is our kind of core aim. So it's quite a long kind of timeline, I guess, in that you apply for our funding, and then you're assessed by at least 2 people. Then we build a shortlist, and then based on the shortlist, the top sort of perhaps 30 to 35 are selected to go through to a decision panel. And then at the decision panel, we have kind of 6 to 8 people sitting around a room discussing the projects, talking about who should get the funding and why, and ultimately making those decisions. I mentioned this before as well, but the thing that sets us apart from other funders, I think, is that we offer feedback. So we are incredibly busy, but we are determined to make sure that we offer feedback to people who aren't successful. The slight catch is that we only offer feedback if you ask for it. So make sure you ask for feedback, and usually that's a phone call that is kind of arranged with one of our grants and programs managers, so they can just tell you a few points about your application that you could improve on, so that hopefully you can apply next time and address those issues. And so this is how you can get involved with PRS Foundation. I would highly recommend that you kind of start checking out what support is available, not just from us, but from other funders as well. I think that it's one of those things in the music industry where, like, if you don't know, then you don't know and you don't get it. So we really try to be as kind of open and as accessible as possible with our funding. And we kind of like to plug people into other funding opportunities as well. So there are amazing funders like Help Musicians UK, like the Arts Council, like Jerwood Arts, and many, and that's just kind of thinking about music. So definitely start to check those organizations out, just because it is there and it's there for you. And so you should use it, and make sure that you're in the mix, because I mean the main reason that people don't get funding is because they don't apply. So So yeah, get involved, and please reach out to me if you'd like any advice about applying for PRS Foundation. I would be more than happy to kind of suggest funds to look at. But as I said, the open fund in October, the next deadline, I think is a really good starting point. And so that's my presentation. And if anyone has any questions or anything that they'd like to discuss, I'm really sorry that it was like quite a trad presentation and I just spoke at you.
Do you mind if I ask a question?
Of course.
Strictly musician, but that was a really clear, useful, amazing presentation, and I think that those who are on this call and those who will yet to watch this will find it incredibly useful. So a big thank you from UK New Artist on that. A question I had was in terms of the kind of contribution one would expect to make with the percentage of the income. What might that look like? What do you, I mean, you know, Arts Council have sort of, well, before the COVID was sort of up front, that was a minimum of 10%. Is there a guideline from you guys as to where financially you would like to see that contribution?
I mean, to be totally honest, it depends on which fund you're applying for. I mean, I would say that for our more like industry funds, like the PPL Momentum Fund and the International Showcase Fund, that tends to be around 25%. But I think for the open fund, it is around 10% that we suggest. But in the first stage of the application form for the open fund, you don't actually need to list the budget. So it's only when we kind of say, okay, you've passed the first round, because I should have said there's 2 rounds in the open fund, and we're kind of trying different processes to try and make it as simple and as transparent as possible. But I mean, to be honest, with the applications as well, like when there is a budget, people say it's really useful because it's quite a rare opportunity to kind of have to fit your project into a format that is kind of, I guess, like an industry standard. So you have to think about timeline, you have to think about what's confirmed and what's not, who you'd like to work with and why. You have to think about how much things are going to cost and if that's reasonable. And so even though with most of our funds you don't have to put the budget in, I think it is like sometimes useful to do so anyway. And yeah, I would say aim for that 10% mark of other investment.
Yeah, just something else I wanted to add, and I'm sure Shekayla will feel this as well, and we talked about this yesterday. You picked up on, you know, basically, you know, when you're asking for support, making that support as kind of authentic, not truthful, but meaningful to you, and not, I mean, I describe it sometimes as don't let the tail wag the dog. Just because the fund says this, it doesn't mean to say that that's going to work for you.
I love that.
You know, so, you know, actually, you know, the more authentic and realistic and change making, you know, if I get this money, this will enable me to do that one can evidence in an application. I feel for you guys and wider, I feel that's a really strong thing. Yeah, it's, you know, it comes from the heart and it's not trying to put a round peg in a square hole. Do you feel that's the case?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think that I think the funding world is quite a scary place to navigate because it feels so language oriented, and that can sometimes be quite that can be a big put off for people. Like especially people who are working with music, you work with sound, you don't you're not used to writing essays or whatever, or you might be, but I mean, like the point is that it's a format that might be uncomfortable, and so you think that you have to kind of use this specific language and talk in a certain way that might be focused on like big numbers and big data, but actually, like, the thing about PRS Foundation is that we do actually care about those individual journeys. Like, we care about the music itself and not the kind of, like, not everything else around it. And like, and we ultimately believe that that will be successful, of course, and so will hopefully generate an income and a career for the people who are applying. But it is, yeah, that journey and the impact, that I think is more about a kind of like human communication in the form than trying to, like, conform to any type of, like, hype language or like kind of standards in, like, what your bio might look like and sounding really descriptive.
Yeah.
It can just be like matter of fact, this is what I want to do and this is why.
Yeah. And for me, it's also, and this will be the change that will take place. You know, this will be the growth. This will be the change. This will get me from A to B.
Yeah.
Because I think that whole thing, you know, funders want to know what their money's going to do.
Yeah.
You know, is it going to help? You know, we want to help you. So tell us how this will help you.
Exactly.
I've got a question,
Do you
Maxi.
want to, yeah.
So given how we've all been in the pandemic for however long now, I know that when you release, like, you know, certain funds like Sustaining Creativity Fund, and there's still been, you know, the open funds as well that you've still been running, still supporting creators and organizations in, you know, quite a, you know, challenging time. And I know my understanding is that there was a priority to essentially accommodate, you know, more digitally led proposals.
Yeah.
As obviously venues were shut, you can have festivals, all that stuff. So I'm curious to know if where's the priority in terms of like, what activity will the fund now prioritize now that we're hopefully moving out of the pandemic and the music industry is reopening again, slowly but surely reopening again?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And actually, so just before, we usually have a big conference every, like, September, October, where we talk about talent development, and we get all of our partners in a room and listen to what they think our priorities should be. Just before the pandemic hit, we had one of those in 2019, I guess it was, and the priority was going to be about research and development, about kind of artists making work and kind of working on their own development in whatever space would work best for them. And weirdly, I think that coincided with the pandemic quite nicely. Like, of course, I'm not saying that anything positive came from the pandemic, but when the pandemic hit, we had obviously already pledged a lot of funding for activity throughout 2020. So our spin, or our kind of flexibility, was more about grants that had already been pledged rather than people who would apply in the future. So we allowed all of our grantees to pivot their projects into whatever they could make happen during COVID. So obviously they had to speak to us about it and we had to approve it, but to make sure that it's still kind of fit in nicely with the original intentions. But we allowed people to kind of move stuff online or to postpone things, extend programs, in some cases work with different collaborators who weren't able to be involved. And even during 2020, we still kind of set money aside for live, because I think that it's important, like, to say that we're all, like, really passionate about music and the industry, and it was really hard to take that the whole live sector just disappeared last year. And so we wanted to try and pledge support in any way that we could to encourage people to come back. So even in 2020, we were still giving out grants for live activity. And I'd say that this year, it will be even more of a focus. So even though we always make sure that we have a good split of kind of project activity, like I guess genre focuses, like a mix between like recording and live sectors. I would say that in the next few rounds, it will be that kind of back to IRL stuff, or back to real life stuff, that will be a priority for us. And I think that's just reflective in a way of what people are applying for. I think that we always want to see innovation. We always want to see people challenging themselves to work with new people and access new audiences. That won't change, but I think like it was really sad that like we started the new funds in the pandemic. I say sad like it's nothing. It was an absolute travesty that so many people just had their income disappear. And so the Sustaining Creativity Fund like had to kind of, I guess, the point of it was not to help people get to a sustainable career position, but it was to help people survive. And that isn't usually what we focus on. Like, help musicians do a lot of kind of welfare work. And the PRS Benevolent Fund, if you're a PRS member, provides kind of support if you need your rent paid or if you're really struggling. Like there are other funds and other funders, sorry, I should say, who provide that kind of support. So I guess during the pandemic, we were kind of forced to take a step back and respond to what people really needed at that time. And I'm not saying that it's going to be business as usual from here on in, but we will keep doing that. And yeah, I think there will be a will within the team to support the live sector as it comes back.
Thank you. That's really, really useful to understand that. I have another question on the topic of like sustainability. I know we've only got 10 minutes left. Outside of the whole funding realm, it's very tricky, very layered, you know. Well, I think once you get your head around it, you know, you kind of find your rhythm, you flow kind of thing. Do you have any advice on how music creators can sustain themselves outside of the funding realm in terms of generating an income for them? Are there any other ways, other avenues that they could pursue to help to fund their music careers, their practice? Absolutely,
yeah. So I mean, I mentioned becoming a PRS member, and I think that is like, I'm not just plugging PRS here, but I think that as a music creator, that is a really important kind of revenue to know about. And alongside that, PPL. So PRS for Music is a collection society for songwriters, and PPL is a collection society for performers. So if you are both writing and performing your own music, then you can collect royalties from both of those collection societies. And like, it can add up. I mean, I think that alongside, like if you're touring, alongside any fees that you might get paid to play a gig, it's a nice, they pay them quarterly, I think it is, so it's a nice boost that is more about kind of regular intervals of payment rather than getting as much as you can every month. And it kind of incentivizes playing bigger shows, playing more shows, getting played on the radio. I think a play on Radio 1 for PRS is something that you get like £3 or something like that, which doesn't seem like a lot, but if you're getting played on quite a few of those stations, then that adds up. And then if you start playing festivals, then that's where it's based on how many people you have exposure to. So definitely look into PPL and PRS. I think PPL is free to join. I think PRS is about £100 to join. So that's why I said you should only join PRS when the time is right, because you want it to basically pay you back. So you want to make sure that you're already getting played on radio and playing gigs when you join, so that it will top it back up. I say like it's really difficult in COVID times to talk about like the kind of income cycle, because a lot of the artists that we work with would tour and kind of make as much money when they're touring to then support recording, and then go back on tour again, and the cycle would continue. So I think like more and more it's about making sure that you're diversifying your income streams as much as possible. So making sure that you are not giving everything away to one area and relying on that for your income. It's making sure that you're thinking about merchandise, like building up your newsletter signups and things like that, so you have direct access to your fans. It's making sure that you're kind of, I guess, not playing loads of shows, but playing the right shows, so that the shows that you're playing have a knock-on effect to every other area. So it's going to be people that do go home and listen to you or buy your records or buy your t-shirts, and everything feeds into it, and it's not something that can then easily be knocked down. It's something that is secure and that you've built, and it's sustainable because you control it. And so although obviously publishing, like big publishing deals are great, and record label advances definitely have their place, I wouldn't rely on things like that. I think it's I think that like someone like Imogen Heap is a great example, who just has her own niche audience, which is a big one. If you didn't know about it, you wouldn't know that it exists, but they invest and are committed to being part of whatever she's doing, and she monetizes that, and that's and there are ethical ways to do that, I think, and so I think definitely working with the right digital service provider, working like getting your music on the right platforms, things like that. We work with SoundCloud, we work with Songtrust, because they care about that kind of stuff. Sorry, Michelle, I saw you put your hand up.
No, Lordy, Jesus, I mean, you know, what you're here for, we want to hear from you. But I just sort of also wanted to add that from a UK new artist perspective, you know, our kind of ethos is we work with all genres, so and any creative, and sometimes I think that, you know, there are lots of opportunities to take the creativity of music, the skill of music, the talent that you have as a creative musician, and apply that to outside of the marketplace of music as well. I think there are, you know, there's if you're talking about just that diversification of income, I mean, you know, I think there's very much about keeping key and keeping focused on one's career, but there are many artistic projects which call for artists across all genres, and I think sometimes that call maybe is only seen by visual artists or performance artists, and you know, the wave doesn't crash very high, you know, across music potentially. And I just cite an interesting example of thanks to PRS, we were funded to do some work with a Birmingham-based musician who we then put forward for a commission at the National Justice Museum.
Wow.
And to work with their collection, and the performer was a rapper. So this, you know, and for her that was something that you would never have considered in a month of Sundays, you know, and actually it would have given a really fresh, interesting perspective on a collection of objects, or, you know, so I think there's just something that's just sort of out there as well that's worth looking at, you know. I think
definitely.
Yeah,
I think that's a really, really interesting point, and it's a personal gripe of mine actually, that people who work in like more popular or commercial genres are not invested in terms of like research and development as much as like alternative or experimental artists, as if the kind of inspiration for your work has to just be the everyday, and not like and not like kind of I don't know, residencies or retreats. I think that would be so valuable in the commercial music world to kind of expand the view of what inspires and what makes up that creative practice. And I think your point was a really good one, and I think that's exactly why we work with organizations as well, so that it's not just the music creator having to invent their career again and again and again. It's the organizations can play a role in connecting those dots and collaborating with like theatre, dance, visual arts, spoken word. We like, although our funding always has to support the music, I think we really like to see those kind of cross-discipline collaborations. And we have a festival called the New Music Biennial, which we run every other year, and usually in collaboration with the City of Culture. So it was Hull last time, and now it's Coventry. We basically, with that, in that festival, we pair 20 composers with an organization who then create a piece of work based on a theme or a or kind of that inspiration that I'm talking about. So I think that challenging yourself and doing unexpected things is also a really important part of your, not just your creative development, but your potential income as well.
Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Maxi. Just before we wrap up, I just want to ask if anybody has any questions